welcome to my channel where I'm trying to become a better miniature painter, and hopefully some of you watching along can get better with me. At this stage of my painting journey, I can look back at some of my older miniatures and look at my current miniatures and see a big difference. Although not one of the best miniature painters out there, I've certainly come along my journey and I'm a much better painter now than I was in the beginning, and so I have some advice that I would like to give to myself in the past, and hopefully this will help some of the newer starter painters out there. So this is going to be a list of 5 things that I wish I knew before I started painting. I am, however, going to skip over learning certain techniques because that's something that just comes along with the journey. So although something like thinning your paint is incredibly important to learn, it's not something that I'm going to have as one of my tips. So in no particular order, number 1, have a plan. What does that mean? Well, something I've started doing recently is if I have a miniature, I will start to look over it. I won't just go straight to painting. I will have an idea in my head of everything that I want to do. So I will look over it, I will look at the more difficult areas to paint in the recesses, and so I'll think to myself, maybe I'll start painting those areas first. I'll look at certain techniques that I might use in different places, like maybe I'll use a wash here to get some of the shades nice. I'll think about the colour palette of the entire miniature before I've painted something, and then once I've finished painting that I'll think, oh, I'll move on to the next bit, what colour shall I paint that? And quite often when I do that, the end result, the colours are kind of all over the place and don't necessarily work well together. So think about the miniature as a whole and have a plan for it from beginning to end, and that way hopefully you'll get a nicer end result. So before you start painting, ask yourself some questions. What bit's going to be the most difficult to paint? What bit do you want to be the main focus? How are you going to get that to stand out? What sort of colour palette do you want to have? Are there any particular techniques that you want to use on this miniature? Just ask yourself some of those questions, and quite often you'll find that it makes the painting process a lot smoother. You don't paint a bit and then ask yourself the question of what colour shall I paint now, or what bit shall I paint next, or how shall I paint this, or anything like that. You don't have to stop and pause and break that flow of painting. You just can keep going through because you know what you're doing. And the second one, do it your way. It's really hard not to compare yourself to other painters out there. The problem is the stuff that we get to see is usually from expert, like professional, amazing painters that have been doing it for decades, and their results are obviously also amazing. And it's not going to be like that when you start out. So don't compare yourself, but I don't just mean the miniatures. I mean how they paint, the techniques that they use, the systems they put in place, sometimes even the advice they give, like in these videos. Don't necessarily listen to it. If you want to sit there and spend ages painting one miniature, do that. If you want to speed paint through an entire army, do that. Do whatever you find comfortable. That way you will learn the methods that you want to use and the process you want to take, and you'll probably find your own style of painting. Don't try to copy someone else. That said, it is a great learning system to put yourself out of your comfort zone, but you need to find that comfort zone first. So do it your way, do it however you find comfortable. Paint the miniatures you want to paint them the way you want to paint them. The end result might not be amazing, but you will see progress, and you will be doing it more comfortably, and you probably will be more motivated to paint it because you're not trying to do something that you're not comfortable doing already. Moving on to number 3, keep your old miniatures. So I just talked about don't compare yourself to other people. Well, do compare yourself to yourself. Maybe keep your first painted miniature out where you tend to paint your miniatures. What you will find is, especially in the beginning, your learning curve is very steep. So you will learn things quickly. Your miniatures will very quickly get better. And looking back and seeing those improvements is self-motivating. It gives you more confidence in what you're doing. It makes you think what you're doing is right. And you can already see the progress that you've made. And that's incredibly good for your mentality of painting. It can also help you learn different techniques because you can see how something is improved and you start to think about how you might be able to improve it even further. And something else I've started to do recently is I have what I think is my best painted miniature out as well. That kind of reminds me that, you know what, I'm not as bad a painter as sometimes I think I am. I can do it. Quite often I find my best miniature paints are ones that I've maybe taken a bit more time with, I've been more patient with. and that helps remind me of doing that. I don't try to rush it or do any of kind of those bad habits that maybe I've picked up. It reminds me to sit down and try and get a better result than that. Try and replace that miniature with a new favourite and a new favourite, which is pushing me to get better and better. Number 4 is pick a detail. Now by this I mean pick a particular bit of the miniature that excites you or that looks most interesting or is sculpted particularly well, and try and make that a little bit better than the rest of it, or try and use a new technique, or try and make that stand out in some way. Now it's important to have consistency across your miniature, so you don't want something to be painted really simply and something to be painted really detailed, because that will just, it won't look right and people will pick up on that. Having a particular detail that's painted to a better standard than the rest is really good, because your eye will focus on that. It will take in the entire miniature, but it will focus on that because that's what your eye and your brain is trained to do. So you will be looking at the best part of your miniature, and again that will help your mentality. It will help you think and remember and remind yourself that, hey, you're getting better. You are a good painter. You will be getting better as well, so you'll be a better painter in the future. Also, for me, when I put a miniature that I've painted down on a tabletop game that I'm playing with friends, they will almost always pick it up and inspect it. And it will do the same to them. They will look at the best painted bit of the miniature if it stands out. If that's that slightly bit better, that's where their eyes will focus. And it makes it easier for them to have, it may sound big-headed or whatever, but to have a compliment to give me. Because someone that isn't into miniature painting, they might look at it and think that it's a good painting but not really know what to say. But if something stands out and they say, oh, I really like how the head on this looks, I really like the cloak, I really like the fur, I really like how you've painted the bag, it makes it easier for them to say and to know what to say about the miniature, and it will reaffirm that in your head that yes, I did do well with that. And number 5 is mindset. Now this is kind of a combination of everything that I've spoken about. You will have noticed I've not talked about particular techniques or methods or practices. It's mostly been psychological. It's mostly been how you would think about painting. One key factor I want to bring up is patience. Now, I've really struggled with this. I've always known that being patient and taking my time is going to get a better result. And I would pick up a miniature and start to paint with that in mind. I would try to think to myself, okay, I'm going to focus, I'm going to take my time, I'm not going to finish this in one night, I'm going to spread this over a few evenings. But I didn't. I always ended up having an end result essentially at the end of that night. I would look at it and think, well, I want to keep painting, but it looks finished, I don't know what to do. And I put that down to me not knowing the techniques, me not being able to do the fine details. And that's partly true, and no doubt still is true, but it wasn't that. It was that I did rush it, even though I thought I was taking my time. I still had this idea of, with layering or glazing or something like that, the professional artists out there, the good artists out there, would be incredibly efficient with their strokes and would be able to get it done in as few strokes as possible. And that's what they would be striving to do, no doubt. And so I had that idea in my head to try and do as few strokes as possible, as few layers as possible. Well, my best results have been when I've switched that up. When I've tried to think, I'm going to try and do as many layers of this as I can to get to as smooth a finish as possible. And I tried to thin the paint as much as possible. I tried to do as many layers and as smoothly and as fine detailed as I possibly can. It takes longer, yes, but the end result is better, and I'm not running on a time limit. I'm just painting miniatures for fun. I mean, yes, I use them in my games, but given the current situation, I haven't been able to do that. So I'm just painting miniatures. I have no timer on me. I may as well take the time. I don't have a whole army to paint. I'm generally painting one at a time. And so I want them to stand out. I want it to be a good result. When I go into a painting session with that mindset, with that approach, it's often my better painted miniature, and quite often it will be the one that replaces my best miniature spot on my little shelf. And that's it, that's my advice, that's my top 5 tips for starter painters. It may not be the video that you were searching for, it may not necessarily be the thing that helps all of you, but it certainly would have helped me. And if someone else is out there that's getting bogged down in the details, that's thinking or being pushed in different directions, well, hopefully this will help you. This would have helped me, as I say. If that's you, if you think this video has helped, has opened your mind to some other options or some other ways of doing things, then please leave a comment and let me know so I know that something I've put out there has had a positive effect. That would make me feel good. If you think it was all rubbish and stupid and I shouldn't be making YouTube videos, leave a comment because that will help me out with the algorithm as well. Leave me a like as well while I got my thumb there. And that's it for this video. If you want to see some videos of me actually painting, then please look at my other videos. Subscribe if you want to see more. I'm planning on having more tips like this, as well as just generally painting miniatures so you can see my progress and journey, and well, anything else. If you want to see something, I'm a new YouTuber. I will do anything to get some likes and views, so leave a comment and I will give it a go. So until next time, bye.